Hello, David, and thank you so
Hi.
much for accepting this invitation to speak and for joining me with a glass of wine. Cheers. You are the
Cheers.
first who has uh,
Here's a drink.
done this in this. This is a fifth conversation that I record like this. And as I was telling you before we got interrupted by your neighbor, I am slightly intimidated by a pure Mundian because I think that I'm a bit more Modian, and as we will come to that later. Um, and so I'll just ask you, not going to much detail because it will probably be irrelevant. We are more interested in your ideas than in anything else. But you were born in Boston, you told me, and then you
Mhm.
moved to Jerusalem. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
That's correct.
So you hold a dual passport?
Yes, I do.
Okay, but you are not right now in the IDF. Just
No, and
if
in fact,
anyone.
I have no connection to the Israeli army.
Okay.
No direct
So
connection.
yeah, okay. No, then as just it's all over the news. So you are not a health expert. You're an
Mhm.
engineer and software, but it's like you are a person who is interested, who has been following this app, and Israel is all over the news as a model of uh, efficient vaccination.
Mhm.
So you are vaccinated. You were telling me with the first dose only, so far not fully inoculated. More than 40% of your population. You got the shot yourself?
Not yet. Not yet.
Coming soon?
Um, but I probably will get it soon. I'll probably get it soon.
But by the way, is this just um, with second thoughts about it, or like you think that it's like a risk assessment wise good to go for it?
So, from a personal point of view, it's kind of I'm not really sure because there are risks associated with getting COVID, and there are risks associated with getting a vaccine. Maybe, who knows? In both cases, we don't know about the long-term risks of either one of them. Like 5 years from now or 10 years from now, we don't know if there's going to be any health risk associated with getting COVID or with getting the vaccine. I'm pretty confident that there are no short-term risks, no large, short-term risks
Well,
to
the
getting the
sample
vaccine.
is large enough of people who have gotten the vaccine, not only in Israel but worldwide.
Right.
So.
By now, millions have gotten the vaccine, and a few people have that. A very small number have had bad reactions, and that's a reasonable risk to take. Um, but we don't know about the long-term effects because there hasn't been a long-term. But on the other hand, we don't know the long-term effects of COVID. So it turns out to be
Well,
about
and we know about the short-term effects of COVID, and for
right.
some people that maybe you don't fit exactly that demographic, but that is like it would be obese, old people with other morbidities, say
Right.
diabetes or something like that. They are pretty serious,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and even for like younger people like
Mm-hmm.
ourselves with generally healthy. I think there is like a bit of lottery ticket. I think there are some genetic factors that have been
Right.
identified
Right.
that can double your some alleles in chromosome 3, something like this,
Mm-hmm.
that it can double your risk out of COVID. So yeah, let's see. Personally, tell you personally, I'm also in software, so I work from home, and I'm very pretty social,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not very exposed to COVID, so I probably won't break even out of getting a vaccine in terms of risk. Though the ethical is something that well, our admired Nassim Taleb, that it is something that we We have studied his books and so on, and we will come to that. But he has tweeted recently about that, and it's not about your risk; it's about others, right?
Right, right. So that's the thing.
It's
The
an
second
ethical,
order,
it's an ethical decision.
right. The second order effects are clear. That if everybody's vaccinated, then the pandemic will die out. So,
Well, that's hopefully so. So
hopefully,
you are already. I mean, that in that sense you are perfectly in a perfect situation to observe that, because you are in Israel, which is the country that has vaccinated, even if it's only with one shot, most people. Are we already seeing some effects? Is like that we can imply that this is effective?
maybe.
Maybe.
The hospitalization rates have gone down, and especially among elderly people who have been vaccinated twice, they've gone down drastically.
That's good news.
So that looks like a good sign.
And see, something that that was today's tweeting, and that Taleb quoted you for that. On top of it is about vaccinating. Well, it's something that Indonesia are doing. They are vaccinating young people first, as they are the most the ones that are more contagious, instead of vaccinating elders that are the more risk exposed in terms of the consequences of COVID. So is this debate something that you have? Because I think Indonesia is the first country that has taken like a contrarian approach, and they are vaccinating 18-year-old first. You are vaccinating old guys first, are you?
Right. Well, I think for Israel is the right approach, because Israel has already bought enough vaccines to cover the whole population. So we're going to vaccinate everybody. It's not a matter of if we only have a few vaccines and we want to use them most effectively to save the largest number of people, there's a good argument saying vaccinate the spreaders and not the people who are most affected by it. But since we're vaccinating anybody anyway, I think it's a correct strategy to vaccinate the most vulnerable first, and then just get everybody. Within 2 or 3 months, we'll just get everybody.
And you are doing it very quickly. Something that I was telling you, that I mean, in Spain, this is from our Worlding data, and if the data is consistent, it will refer, I guess so, to the first shot. In Spain, we are slightly over 2%. In Israel, you are over 40%, and at some days, the days where you were the quicker, you were vaccinating almost 2% of the population daily.
Right.
So you have stocks that the supply chain has been secured somehow. Right. It's a bit mysterious, yes. But somehow. And logistically also, you have done something extraordinary. Is the army participating in the vaccination campaign? Only healthcare services? Okay.
So we have very good healthcare in Israel. The national health insurance was put in place only in 1995, and I think they did a good job. I think actually Israel in general has done a good job with regulations. Also, the regulation of the internet sector is very good, I think, compared to the United States. They have somehow this. They make the regulations so that there's like a mixture of they leave the capital incentives in place. So there's a mixture of regulation and private sector that works.
Maybe also scales, this, because sometimes, I mean, it's a typical conversation is maybe it's easier for Israel to be an outlier as it's a small country. I will give you an example from Spain. Okay, I think the best the West region in terms of vaccination is a small northern region called Asturias, where they have more or less and pretty quickly so used all the vaccines that they had available. Whereas in Madrid, they were vaccinating, it was ridiculously low numbers, you know, like 5% of the population, whereas the other guys had used like more than half of their vaccines. And it's like, okay, it's, you will have a bit of this regression to the mean in that you know, Asturias being a very small with only two big cities, and not like the whole region will not have even I don't know, probably something like 1/5 of the population of Madrid. It is easier for them to be outliers in respect to Madrid, that will be more dragged into the mediocrity.
Well, in Israel, the government is not doing the vaccination. It's the health funds that are doing the vaccinations, and there are several health funds, and everybody in Israel is registered with one of the health funds, and that health fund provides all of their health care.
So they are private institutions?
Yeah, well,
Oh.
I mean, they're non-profit organizations.
Okay, then okay. I don't know about your model. It's the first time I hear about it. In Switzerland, it's private. You know, it's a model that, as far as I know about Obamacare, it resembles a bit to Obamacare in that you have to. There is no private. There is no public health care. There are only private institutions, and you are mandatory. You have to sign up through an insurance. You know, I've got the cheapest, as I'm generally healthy, well, almost the cheapest plan. But if you don't get one, and you have revenue, and the authorities are pretty efficient at finding out these things, you know, then you are assigned one. Like almost randomly by the canton, you know, this is not federal policy, but the state level. Though all the states have to comply with this, and yeah, well, I'm telling you this. Well, I don't even know. I know that they are in Geneva, where I have my apartment. They are better. Though I'm in Spain now, but in Geneva they are better. They have vaccinated more age groups than we have in Spain. In Spain, we are starting 80-year-old people over 80 years old now, and in Geneva they are already at 75-year-olds. So I don't know. I don't know if their model is more efficient. Maybe so. Maybe so. Anyway, see, the COVID testing is something that you did a lot of tweets, and you were telling me that this has not been pushed far enough, has it?
You know, I don't know what the issue is. So clear, it's so obvious, and no country in the world has adopted this plan.
Yeah, no, I'll interrupt you, and you will excuse me. Slovakia are carrying out mass testing. They are doing now a second campaign of mass testing, of testing basically everyone.
Testing everybody, but they're just doing it one time.
Well,
that was not what I was suggesting. Okay,
you are maybe thinking about something else, but this we had started discussing this, and I think that, you know, that the smartest, as much as I absolutely second your thoughts on this, and I don't understand why we are not testing more, because there's no side effects at all of it, and the economic break even, that is something we were also saying. Is like you said that testing can cost, and I will let you tell us about it, as little as €2 or $2 per test, even if it's
half
20.
a euro, quarter of a euro.
You will explain us how, because I mean, I don't know how you can get so cheap tests. I know that my sister, you know, the thing is I think now they allowed pharmacies to do them, but this is pretty recent, and not only in Spain, same in Italy. So I was in Italy last year, and still my sister got some antigen tests on the internet where the pharmacies were still not giving them at 15 euro each or something like that, which is still at that price that I'm sure that it has a crazy markup. It's still the economic case for testing is very good for most people if you consider like an average salary in countries of the European Union, you know, and that people being locked down and the economic effects of that. It's obvious, as you say. And the only caveat I see to that is false positivity rate, that the more you will test, the more false positives you will be getting, and the more people ask to quarantine on not good grounds. But the thing is that we are quarantining everyone right now, right? So, how do you get these cheap tests?
So these tests, they're as I said, they're antigen tests or lateral flow tests. They're just like chemicals printed on a piece of paper, and you can just like, there are different ways to administer it. You can just say, have these little test tubes, little plastic test tubes with saline solution in it. You put it in your mouth, you swish it around, spit it back in, and you put these little pieces of paper into the test tube, and it will change color if you have COVID.
But now, is it like homemade kind of thing?
No, no, you can just buy the whole everything.
It really can be produced.
Costs only a few cents. It's not like it's not.
And you could scale this, like I think so. But as I was telling you, Slovakia, I think they are buying whatever about tests, or I think it's the antigen one. I know it's not PCR; they send the antigen one they are doing, but you could scale this, right?
Yeah, well, they're selling them now for like $10 or $20, because not because of what I just described. What I just described costs only a few cents. It's because they require them to be administered by a professional. So you're paying somebody's salary to do that, and then they require that you record the results and send them into like some central location. So they have to like, write the software that will do that. And hire the people who will.
Okay, so it's more the processing costs that are making it expensive.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. See, the thing is also that I've seen arguments against doing these tests that are in the same line that the like bogus arguments that were done in April last year against face masks. It's like, oh, people will presume that they are negative. And I will even give you that it may happen for some crazy nuts, but some crazy nuts are acting as if they were negative today without no test. But anyway, people
it's exactly like the masks. What they said about the masks, that people will wear masks and they'll think that they're immune. So people will take these tests and they'll think that they're immune.
I guess that the thing is, here we have vaccinated so little people that the question is not even in the air. But in Israel, probably some people will be saying that for the vaccination, and people will get like comfortable, which it doesn't materialize. It didn't happen for masks, and I'm pretty sure that I know that Slovakia experiment was kind of successful. Okay, so they managed more or less to curb, similarly as we did in Spain, so to say, with a massive lockdown that lasted weeks in October. They managed to get like similar or probably better results through testing the whole country, 5 million and something people, over a couple of weekends. They did this, I think it was October or November last year, and now they are doing a second round. And this, I think you are suggesting that we go even over that, but even that seems good enough. I guess they record the results, and people with a positive result are mandated to keep home.
Yeah, well, my suggestion is do none of this. None of this. Just sell the tests themselves.
Let people buy that and test themselves. And you
can send them to give it to schools. You can train the teachers to administer these tests to the children. So every child will get tested once a day, and adults will do it for themselves. maybe some places, I don't know, offices or something, restaurants. When you go into the restaurant, they'll train the staff to give everybody a test before you go into the restaurant, before you go into the baseball stadium or whatever. In various in places where you might get a lot of exposure, they can test you, and very sure within a few weeks it'll just all go away because so many people will get tested that there will be no place for COVID to spread to.
Well,
And
I don't know.
you'll
Yeah.
be missing a few because the problem with these tests is that they're not quite as sensitive as the PCR test. But that's okay. That's okay because it's actually, the antigen tests actually measure not whether you're infected, but whether you're infectious. So they catch you a few days later, but look, instead of catching you on the second day, they'll catch you on the fourth day. But
Yeah, there's a big of lag versus the PCR that it is more immediate, right? You will get results in one day.
Except that it's not. Because in the PCR test, you get tested on the second day, and you get the results on the fourth day. And with the antigen tests, you can test yourself on the fourth day and get the results immediately, like on the spot.
Yeah, and besides, I think the PCR rate positivity keeps increasing in the sense that it seems like, I'm not an expert, but there are more false positives across time of people that have like a dead strain of the virus in their tongues or whatever, and that they test positive when they are not. Right. Which is a problem that apparently, when you do the antigen test, is not as serious. So
PCR test catch you, give you a positive test when you no longer have the disease. If you get infected, and then you get over it, you're no longer infectious, PCR test will still give you a positive result.
I think you persuaded me absolutely, and I was trying to make like a contrarian case in forums and things like that with people, and no one was bringing. The best argument against it was false positivity, which is not that good. It is, even if you just catch 70% of the people, it's better to detect 70% of the people and isolate them that isolating everyone. But anyway. And another one that I heard, but I don't buy into it either, is okay, some people cannot afford to go into isolation, which, yes, I understand that. It's like if you are on minimum wage or something like that, you cannot go into isolation. But then I say, like, well, if I test positive and I lie about that and I'm going out, at least I guess if I'm not a psycho or a sociopath, I will put a mask and I will take like a lot of care in order not to infect other people. I will be extra cautious. So
I'm suggesting to end all this reporting requirements. So if you test positive, only you know.
Yeah, well, and you will normally presume that person will behave as a human being, which, like, I would say, like, most people are human beings. And the thing is that right now also, for instance, I know that in Spain they were asking for PCR tests for people to come in, which I'm fine. It seems like a sound, wise policy, but only from this week they are like asking to provide material. So they were saying, okay, it seems like there were some people faking PCR test results, or even, presuming that they were not going to ask like the slip with the result of the test, and they were not doing it, even if they legally had to, and they could be fined by not doing so. So now it's like they are going to start to ask for these slips to every passenger from this week, and this is a policy that has been in place for 2 months or something like that. So it's anyway, it's yeah, I tell you also quite honestly, since I've been in Spain for a couple of months now, I've almost closed myself in my apartment. I see very little people, and I have almost mentally disconnected with the news cycle about COVID, which is exhausting. So let's keep that aside. See that you are a keen reader of Taleb, as I am, and I think that I follow him and yourself on Twitter, and I think that originally he was on Facebook, right? And there was like a core of followers on Facebook that then moved to Twitter. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because I was not on Facebook or not following that.
I don't actually remember how it started. It was something like but somehow I discovered that Nassim had a Facebook page, and he was using that Facebook page to talk about the ideas for his books. And he actually shared drafts of his books on that page. Like he would put it up for like a day and then take it down, and just to get feedback. And somehow I discovered this. I don't remember how. And there were only like, I don't know, a few hundred people who knew about it. And there are maybe only like, I don't know, 50 people who are active.
And you were one of them.
A very tight group of people who are very involved with Nassim's books and the process of writing it.
The editing and the part and giving feedback. Right. Because that's something that I think that he is quite unique about. That is that, of course, it's very personal. He has a style that it is almost impossible to imitate and all that, and all that is true. But he also looks for a lot of feedback, and it feels like, for people like you who have participated into that, a bit like a common enterprise of many people giving their opinion, which is extraordinary. He's doing some things that are really like out of the box, or maybe that they were common ground in the Middle Ages or something like that, and no one is doing today.
I definitely recommend that as a process for writing. If you can get a fan club, to give you feedback.
Well, I'm glad you said the word, because I define myself as fan, and I said like I don't have any other pretense regarding that. So I've met him a couple of times, but it was me attending his seminars and that kind of situation, like not private situations. Now the thing is that something that I appreciate in your tweeting, and it's like you as a poor Mundia, and I will come to that, is that sometimes you disagree with Taleb, okay? Because many of these people that you say, or maybe not the hardcore of the original guys, but they will be like a bit shy in expressing any kind of disagreement, which you don't. As I remember, like Taleb went into a fight with Quillette editors or something like that, and you're saying like, actually, I like that publication, and it's like many people were not even daring to say so, maybe out of fear of being blocked by Taleb, which he accepts disagreements, of course.
It's a completely different, dynamic right now, just because of the scale. Because back then we were only, as I said, only maybe 200 people total. I don't know, maybe 300, not that much, and only a subset of those people were very active, and everybody knew each other, and it was a completely different dynamic than now, where you have, it's like
he has 700,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah,
I think, almost.
And it's just that nobody has the bandwidth for really what's going on there.
And, is he on Facebook, or he dropped that, right?
He's on Facebook. He doesn't. I don't think he posts there very often. I'm not there very often either. So.
Yeah, me neither. I don't like it very much. I have a Facebook page, and sometimes I use it to keep in touch with people who are not in Twitter, but I just don't like it. It's not so conversational.
Well, I stopped posting there because they started putting warnings on my
Oh,
posts.
well, that may come soon to Twitter, unlikely.
Yeah, so far Twitter
Unfortunately,
has not done that.
not yet, not yet.
They put
But
warnings. I've shared posts of other people that have warnings on them, but they haven't put warnings on my own posts.
well, anyway, I started this page that was anti-fragilista, and you were one of the early subscribers, and that was reason for pride to me. It has not really picked up, and it's like even if he has 700,000 followers on Twitter, and I was targeting that demographic of people who are like fans of Nassim. The active part is maybe not so big as you were saying, you know, like people who have their own ideas, like, and we will come like to your Mundia Modia framework, or people who are writing, or people who are like a bit. There's many of them will be like not intellectual, which is perfectly fine. You know, they're like very smart people with other set of interests, which is perfectly respectable. Um, and well, it's hard to get a good number of collaborators that it is interesting, so to say. Um, anyway, but I published your article, Mundia and Modia,
Mhm.
and this is just, I don't know if it's not exactly that, because I'll come to that. We will come to that and we'll let you develop that. But in Spain, you know, it's a typical binary framework that we set, is that when you are in high school, the last years of high school, you have to, you know, select, so to say, a STEM, what we say sciences, and you have to select, or you have to select, we call it letters, that will be more like people that go into whatever philology, philosophy, sociology, whatever. And anyway, and then people say like, I'm a sciences guy and I'm a letters guy, you know, depending on what was the selection that they did. Though I mean, that's a pretty bad uh, framework, so to say. And what you are doing is something else. And I'll just give you some notes that I took, okay, as I was going through that. Who are Mundians? Okay, for Mundians, the world is made of immutable laws. We can successfully manipulate the world by learning them. They want to learn how things are. The way to resolve disagreements for them is to understand things better, first principles. Modian, on the other hand, see the world as made of relationships between people. We can successfully manipulate the world by figuring out who is powerful. They must know who and what is in or out. And any faux pas can lead to an immediate loss of status. Just tell you, I think that a lot of people in Taleb Twitter are Modians, according to your framework. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't want to judge Taleb's followers, but in
Well,
general,
most people are Modians, Taleb followers included. No?
right. Well, so the way I put it in this essay is that all of us live in both worlds, but most of us live in one world much more than the other world.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
fair enough. There is a great deal of overlapping, of course.
so, and I also point out that even for Mundians, Modia is more important to them than Mundia.
Mm.
But even like if you're a mathematician, like I've even heard this from mathematicians, they're in math. That's the most like Mundian possible profession. What really motivates them is success in the eyes of their peers.
Well, there is something about this, about Benoit Mandelbrot, I think, in Anti-Fragile, on some of the Incerto books. I think it's Anti-Fragile, in which, well, I think he says this about French mathematician, and that it includes Benoit Mandelbrot, who was obsessed with Nobel Prize, This is like absolute reference for Nassim, and he was obsessed apparently about getting that price. And there was another guy. I will not name because I think I know who he is, and he's pretty close to Taleb, but maybe it would be in bad taste. Who was a bit obsessed about Mandelbrot having stolen his glory because he had made some earlier works about fractals or that kind of geometries. And this maps well into what you were saying, right? So the big price sometimes is in the Modia world, even for Mundians.
Right.
And this is like,
as a Mundian, it's very hard to work for a long time on something without recognition. Like you always feel like you want the world to recognize it in the end.
I guess you have to have a special psychological makeup, a bit same as Taleb writes for the guys who are option buyers. I think that that you have to endure many losses and not to care about the price so much, and that's like not most people are like that. It seems
he says that about himself that it's very difficult. That he's doing this because he knows that it's the right thing to do, but he finds it difficult to do it.
Maybe it's something that is against human nature. I don't know.
Against human nature. That's right.
Well, the thing is that there are no pure Mundians, or there is a lot of overlapping between Mundians, Modians. I have the impression, and correct me if you're wrong, that you say in your essay that you are a bit bothered by binary classifications that go into ideology, left, right, conservatives, liberals, things like that, because these change over times. Whereas the framework that you are proposing here, and that I use it, so you manage to meme me into it, okay? So, and this Mundia and Modia framework, it's a bit more cross time, right? It will be true today, and it will be true in year 500 BC.
Right. So what I said was that you can't look at people think of left right as being having to do with policies. There's some policies of left wing and some policies of right wing, and I don't see that at all. For example, we just saw in the last few years that until a few years ago, trade barriers were left wing and the right wing wanted free trade. And suddenly that just reversed. And it reversed and nobody even noticed it, hardly.
Some of us did. Some of us did.
Some of us did, but most people just like got swept along, and without even feeling any kind of internal contradiction, they just adopted the new policy.
Oh yeah, and it's this guy. What's his name? He was very left wing minister in the French government. I forgot his name, but he was like writing and like saying against globalization and against the industrialization. Suddenly Trump gets that agenda, and then suddenly all left wingers move to the other side. Yeah. And it's like you say that these changes of moods are more typical of Modians than they are of Mundians.
That has to be Modia. That has to be Modia. Modia is the social world, and as I frequently say, there's no inertia in Modia. Inertia is a property of Mundia, of the real world, but people somehow have the ability to change their ideas instantaneously if, under certain circumstances, if they feel like some kind of greater social paradigm demands it.
Well, that's the thing, there's also, sometimes, even before I know your framework, is like if you had people that were always consistent, that the elections results will always like be so to and over ideological lines, you would have like the election results that would be every 4 years, like almost the same, and you need somehow, because I saw some people, I'm a bit like that, but not in extreme manner. That switch, change their minds about things like very, very quickly. I'm like very slow to that. I can do that, but it's very slow process.
No, well, you're allowed to change your mind in Mundia. I mean, if the facts, if you're, for example, COVID policy. Like at the beginning, we didn't know anything, and we made some guesses, and then we learned things, and it's perfectly normal in Mundia to as you learn more information, you change you change your evaluation. In the beginning, we didn't know exactly how COVID was transmitted. We're very worried about surfaces and about water and all kinds of things. And now we know that it's not.
The formats have nothing to do with it almost.
That it's it may be theoretically possible, but in reality, it doesn't get spread by surfaces. It gets spread by
airborne aerosols. Huh?
Yeah. So,
well, yeah, it is.
It's a normal Mundian process of where you learn more and you change your opinions according to what you learn.
This is this because I like it, and it's a powerful concept that I learned in software development. Is in Agile, the uncertainty count. I don't know if you have heard about that, but it's like at the start of a project, there are a lot of unknowns, and as long as you advance down the line and you're developing your product, there are like a more clear picture of the situation, and then the uncertainty converges into like lesser. And this is something that it's a concept that it is typically used in this agile framework, which I'm a big of a defender of that framework. And it applies in many other areas. Anyway, some examples of things like for people to integrate this that you would see, like even if there is overlapping, okay, but it's if we had to illustrate these concepts, we could say like an engineer building bridges and that needs to calculate the tensors of the materials and so on, or a farmer that needs to grow a crop of potatoes. These guys will be more inclined to Mundia, whereas a Hollywood actor or even politicians will be more Modians, right?
Right.
And
so basically, we actually been going into specifics here without ever talking about the framework itself. So let me just back up a little bit now that we're halfway through. So Mundia and Modia, we think that the world, if people were to describe the world, you would probably most people would probably describe the world in terms of Mundia, in terms of, I don't know, gravity and biology and physics and and these are the laws that the world works by. But most people don't actually live in that world. They live in a social world, and they believe things not because of their interaction with the world, but because of their interactions with people. And I use the example of climate change in my as an illustration of how different Mundia and Modians will approach this. And by the way, the biggest criticism I got about that essay is I agree with everything you say, but not what you said about climate change.
Which you don't make any statement. It's more like
don't make any statements about climate change.
It's more like a self-assessment test. Judge yourself how you come to your conclusions about that particular topic, and depending on how you reach your conclusions or your opinions, you are more likely to be one thing or another.
Right. This is a perfect example of what Taleb calls Wittgenstein's ruler, where the the thing that you're measuring measures, the table measures the ruler, not the ruler measures the table. So people, I say explicitly, I had to go back and read my essay, but it's in there. I said, notice I haven't said anything about the truth value of global warming. I didn't say anything about whether it was right or wrong.
But the fact that you don't have you're not expressing like an ultimate truth that it is universal or something like that already pieces a certain demographic of people.
Right. So the fact that I don't say that the science says something,
it's a setup problem.
Tells non-scientists, tell people who don't think in terms of science, that I'm saying that it's not true.
I'm just I have your article in front of my eyes, so let me just I'll read the paragraph so that there is no ambiguity. How did you form your opinion about global warming? The answer most likely depends on whether you are a Mundian or a Modian. A Modian would say, obviously, there is anthropogenic global warming. All the right people believe it. There is consensus among experts. A Mundian would say, even though there is consensus among experts on the issue, there are some experts who disagree. How do we know who are right or who are not? Only a few decades ago, the experts were warning about global cooling. Minority views have often overturned the scientific consensus. Not enough time has passed to come to a conclusion. The jury is still out. Now, note I am not saying anything about the truth about anthropogenic global warming, only about the heuristic we use to reach our decisions when we are not well informed. I guess that what bothers people is that you are giving a line of you are allowing a person to express an opinion that it is not purely Modian in the sense that the experts believe X or Y. Anyway.
Right. So most people, they think they're talking about science or engineering or things like that, but they're really talking about who they believe is right. And you see, I don't know, the comedy shows will say, oh, you don't believe in global warming? You also don't believe in gravity? You also don't believe that 2 + 2 is 4? They'll give this and this really has nothing to do with it. Science is not about belief. You're not supposed to believe that it's true. You're supposed to understand that it's true.
The thing is that many scientists are even Modians. And it's even, again, I know that you say that there are overlapping magisteria, but there will be people that are more pure Modians and more pure Mundians. It's I think they are not even aware of that. And it's it's one of the learnings about COVID as well, because I was discussing, I allowed myself to have discussions or conversations on Twitter with doctors when there were against face masks. Okay. And it's it's because I didn't see any, as we were talking test, I didn't see any reasonable argument besides things like WHO says that if you are not infected, you don't need to wear a face mask. And the thing is that they were pure Modians. Then they changed their minds overnight, and guys with more than 10,000 followers, deleted those tweets, and then they were asking people to wear face masks.
It's so frustrating talking to a Modian. You can't talk to them because they're just not speaking your language. They can't understand what you're saying, even if you tell them. Even if you tell them exactly how you get to your conclusions, they'll still say something like, oh, you just think that because so and so says so. You're just following that quack. That they won't believe that you actually have a mind of your own that works in a Mundian fashion, because they don't have that mind. They don't have that mind. It's like a blind spot. It's like not seeing a color.
I see. You say also that institution businesses, as they grow, they tend to get co-opted by Modians, so to say, right?
This explains a tremendous amount of what you see out there, a tremendous amount. It's why businesses behave so illogically sometimes. One of the reasons, anyway.
Would you like you don't like to answer that kind of questions because I've asked this on Twitter to you. Would you say like 80% Modians or kind of Modians versus 20% kind of Mondians would be like a fair assessment as per your expert opinion?
I don't know. What I do know is that there are a lot of people who are just pure Modian, pure. Like there's just no way to talk to them, from a Mundian point of view. And then there's a spectrum of people. Like we're all Modians to some extent. We all I make a lot of my I get a lot of my opinions from other people, even though I'm mostly Mundian. The fact that I live in a world of people and I care about people, and the fact that I don't have enough knowledge to actually have an informed opinion about all kinds of things makes it inevitable that I have Modian opinions about all kinds of things, and maybe I don't even know to what extent. But I do know that for some things,
You think by yourself.
I just reach my own conclusions that they are what they are, and they don't fall into some kind of category, political category or social category. They just are the things that I think.
Well, this fellow that is a Real World Risk Institute, this seminar that Taleb gives, instructor is called Joe Shipman. Probably you know him on Twitter.
I know him on Twitter.
Well, I had this, I think, Twitter conversation with him about, or he was making this point. I don't remember if I was in that thread, but that actually the argument of authority, appealing to an authority, is not a fallacy. It's sometimes like dialecticians or people that are into oratory say that it's a fallacy. It's not a fallacy. It's because it can be information. Is how, like, from whom are you getting your opinions about it? He would say, like, for instance, Taleb would have like a very strong signal to noise ratio. Okay, so then, I mean, as high as I know, then I maybe, because I think it happens to me, I think I was telling you that I'm Modian. I think that this web page that I set up where I wanted collaborators is kind of a Modian endeavor, but I'm also a bit Mundian. Okay, so I used to reach or try to reach my own conclusions and not like just whatever the last headline of a press is saying. And with Taleb, I have to admit that I get strongly influenced by his views, or if he has an opposing view to mine, I would review that. And that's like that's a Modian kind of operation, though, if you consider that his signal to ratio, signal to noise ratio is so high, then it's also a bit Mundian to review your opinion when you are diverging with someone like this.
Right. I would never disagree with Nassim Taleb without thinking about without thinking about why I disagree with him, like, without having a clear understanding of why I disagree with him.
I understand.
Because I respect him. Intellectually, I respect him that much.
Yeah, that's when you respect like like you with me with you, that you're slightly intimidated about disagreeing with someone like this. uh, and you make also in your essay a point that I like, and it's I find it very on point and very appropriate. We are all born pure Modians, right? When we are toddlers, we depend on our parents for everything, and when we are slightly older, then our teachers will learn us things, and we only over time, and not all of us, develop this Mundian kind of thinking. Would you say that it explains somehow? I have an alternative explanation that is more canonical, so to say, but you say that you explain somehow like people shifting left to right and conservative views as they age, and they judge things not as much in relation to other people's as much as things themselves.
Well, I use the terms Mundian and Modian for a reason, and not conservative, progressive, because the categories are not exactly the same. These categories, progressive, conservative, are Modian categories. They're not. They're all about social.
They're labels. They're putting
labels.
people on a label, on a
they're political. They're political labels, and politics is a social phenomenon. So that is the reason why I came up with my own labels. By the way, we didn't say this yet, but do you recognize the linguistic roots of Mundia and Modia? You're a Spanish speaker, so you probably do.
Well, I mean, it's obviously Latin. Mundus, world. Modia is that like, well, fashion in Spain is moda, right? So I guess it's the same stem, but I'm not a Latinist. Okay, we study some Latin in high school. I don't even know if that's the case even today, but I'm not very good at Latin.
Okay, well, so even in English, you have words like mundane. Mundane means of the world, and I kind of like that. Mundane also means kind of boring, because as opposed to Modia, like mode means like fashion. Like it's exciting. Like the mode is something that's, you want to be there. You don't want to be mundane. You want to be the mode.
Okay.
And that feeling of wanting to be there, that's a social instinct.
Well, there's the thing, something about fashion that I've always, I've never been very on fashion, and is something that I actually have shirts and things like that I was using like 20 years ago. Just to illustrate the pen. And since they were not on fashion 20 years ago, they are not on fashion today, but I can still wear them, so to say, right? Which, if you are kind of Modian or in the fashion mode guy, well, you will have to change your wardrobe every year, as so many people do, and I find it hard to understand, because sometimes I even find hard to understand Modians myself, or pure Modians. It seems a bit of a soccer game, even if they eventually make it higher in the institutions.
It's exactly a soccer game, and it's meant to be a soccer game, because those people who can't keep up with the fashion are obviously unfashionable. Like it's a what they call an honest signal. Like lifting, like the peacock's tail is an honest signal that the peacock can fly with that tail. That's a signal that the peacock is very healthy, because if a peacock that wasn't very healthy wouldn't be able to fly with such a big tail. So being able to keep up with fashion is also an honest signal, because you have to be really plugged into the social cues in order to be able to keep up with fashion.
Well, the thing is also that as you were making this biology analogy, I think you are a lot into that, and you sometimes post videos or things on this matter, which is also some of my interest. But uh, I follow fellow on Twitter that goes by the name of Lindy Manning. He would say, like, that you have to be like, when you are single, you have to be, is like almost you are constrained to be a bit on fashion and follow like the trends, like to show up that you are in the market, so
Right.
to say. And it's like what he calls to be in the relationship domain, when you have already mated, then you can allow yourself to be a bit more like yourself. And if you are pure Modian, you will still renew your wardrobe every year. If you are not, you probably feel more free to just be a bit quirky, or put like clothing that really suits you as you are.
Mhm.
Which is also an interesting viewpoint, linking it to some physiological urges, right?
Mhm.
Anyway, you also say that you try to say, that it's better not to be judgmental about these things, even if you are Mundian yourself, you self-identify as Mundian, but that Mundians are not better than Modians, and it's not like a value judgment, right?
Well, what I say is that there are Mundian problems and there are Modian problems. And we have to use Modian solutions for Modian problems and Mundian solutions for Mundian problems. If you're building a bridge, that's Mundia, and you have to do it right so the bridge doesn't fall down. But if you're, say, managing a group of people, that, might have some aspects of Mundia in it, but it's a largely Modian problem because you're managing people. And you have to, if you're just good at building bridges, you might not be good at that.
It may. And how you apply your framework, because you have a kind of interest also about what happened in the last US election, and how do you connect these ideas to what happened, the whole thing? I guess you have thought through your own lenses.
Yeah, well, the way I look at it is that Trump is the first Modian Republican.
Okay.
Like, the previous Republicans, in a while at least, the Republicans were always these like boring people who, they were, the Mitt Romney types, like they knew how to solve problems technically, but like they didn't give you good feelings. They didn't make you feel good. They didn't, Romney, who was like the nicest guy, he was successfully tarred as somebody who wants to kill your grandmother with cancer, and he's nothing like that at all. He's the guy who like volunteered in a hospital and changed people's bedpans. It's he's somebody, he probably gave the most to charity of any presidential candidate that like ever ran for president of the United States, and yet he was tarred as being ungenerous and unfeeling.
Well, I think there was that video where he was making some remarks about the 47%.
Yeah, well, that's a typical Mundian mistake. That he deserved to, that killed him, and he deserved it.
I think so.
He never has said that to anybody. And it's actually wrong. He should have said, I'm going to get those 47%, get that 47%, because he was thinking that he was imagining that people were talking about their own, they were making judgments from their own self-interest, and that the 47% were benefiting from government handouts, therefore they would vote for Democrats.
That's a good point. But that's not how most people think.
That's not the way people, and if I were one of those 47%, I would be pretty insulted at somebody who thinks that I vote that way.
Yeah, he was looking down, on people and on the small folk, so to say.
That's a typical Mundian.
And he was saying this also, for those who don't remember, probably a fancy dinner in which people would have paid $10,000 per head to attend that thing,
well,
right?
everybody does that. That's that's the way politics works.
Yes, no, I'm not judging about that, but he was like implying to those guys that there was 47% that were below people attending that dinner that would never change their camp, and that you don't even need to try to appeal to those because their vote would never be possible to get for the Republicans, which is like, I mean,
And then
right
Trump
now
came along and got exactly those
sounds
47%.
it sounds so crazy because now the main narrative, which I don't think it's that good, but the massive narrative is that the deplorables were the guys who were voting Donald Trump, right?
Right.
Which is I mean, there are all kinds of people voting for Donald Trump. He got 70 plus a million votes. But regarding maybe you don't want to go into that arena, fraud claims made by Donald Trump, like you have tried to make your own Mundian kind of inquiry about that, right?
Yeah, well, that's it's it's completely Mundian analysis, but it doesn't have anything to do with my Mundia Modia theory. I just know, and I think that you do too, from what I understand that in Europe it's similar, that in Israel we have an election process where it's very hard to commit fraud. The polling stations are small, like between like 500 and 700 people per polling station. You go in, the way it works is that you go in, one person goes in at a time. There are like 3 election workers there that have to agree, and there are like 3 or 4 observers from different parties are able to appoint observers, and they're there in this small room, which is usually like a classroom of a school, and has one polling station. You go behind the screen. There's a screen. You fill out your what happens is you go in. You show them your ID. They check to see that you're on the list, and they give you an envelope. And you take that envelope behind the screen. You fill out your ballot. You put it in the envelope. You come out, and you put the envelope into a box. This is so. You see, the envelope goes into the box in view of everybody.
It seems extremely bulletproof. Spain's is I mean, in terms of what you explained for the envelope, is not like that, but the tables, the polling stations are citizens that are randomly picked. It's a penal offense not to show up. So it's like serious. So they take this seriously. So you have to go. Like, I mean, people can give. There are reasons to be exempted. Like you have like I don't know, to take care of a sick relative or things like that. But generally you cannot escape that because it's on a Sunday, and well, there are the observers, as you're saying, and then the votes are counted by these citizens that are randomly picked, and with the observers from the other parties. Polling stations are not as big as in the US, as far as I know. And I just like, it's independently of what I think about Donald Trump claims. I was surprised to learn these things about this election, that the US system seems so faulty in that there are voting machines doing the counting, which maybe they are good, but maybe they are also hackable, and or you can have some plausibility of hackability on them, or you can like there are volunteers doing vote counts, which seems that seems particularly crazy to me, because in Spain you would presume that the volunteers are like biased, and it will be like the guys from one party that are going to fix the election,
Right.
And the thing is
cure ballots. They cure ballots. Do you know what that is? That's a crazy thing. I don't think there's any other country in the world that would accept this idea of curing ballots.
What is that?
They take a ballot, and where a person has not like filled it out carefully, they copy the ballot onto an empty ballot. and and they do it right, and then they put that. Can you imagine? Can you imagine any other?
Besides, I was telling this to Paul Scala's, Lindy man, I was telling you this. There are even films that talk about these things. It's not even new phenomenon. There is like this film of the 40s that is called The Great McGinty or something like that, where they show all these things that you are telling me. So the thing is that I my opinion, okay. So the thing is also, I'm a bit like on a disadvantage. First, I don't have a skin in the game on this. I find it slightly fascinating. I could not prevent myself from tweeting about it because, but and I'm also at disadvantage with some guys who, like yourself, who have a skin in that game. In that. I'm not so interested, so I will not peel out reports of 100 pages or watch videos of 200 4 hours about the allegations. And it's not because I think that they are impossible. It's because I'm not that interested, and I have more or less made up my mind a bit on a Modian way, because I think that that I don't trust much the fellow, and that he was going to make fraud allegations, even if he won, which is something that he did in 2016. What I have discovered by reading your tweets and so on is that there is like a kernel of plausibility about the whole thing because the U.S. electoral system in many states is so faulty.
I've been complaining about this for decades, and I saw this election, and I think it might be true, as the opportunity to fix this problem. Because I'm just horrified. I'm horrified that the way that elections are done in the United States. I mean, moving ballots from place to place. In Israel, in addition to what I said, what I described up to now, they each polling station is given a certain number of envelopes, and they're numbered, and the number of envelopes that are voted plus the number of envelopes that remain have to be equal the original number of envelopes. And at the end of the day, they open the box and they count the ballots right there in that room with the same people. So this idea of transporting ballots from place to place, when I saw that film of the polling station, the counting station closing down, and then the observers went away, and then suitcases of new ballots were brought out, and they continued counting. Now, it turns out that those suitcases were actually real suitcases that the ballots were kept in, and not like some suitcases from some other place. But to me, it's still scandalous. It's scandalous that they're moving that they actually move these suitcases from one place to another. It's so easy just to lose a suitcase. You know according to demographics, like which neighborhoods vote for which person, and
for your case, it may be like you are an extraordinarily good position to observe that, since you are dual citizenship, and the state where you are living now is, I presume, maybe I'm wrong about that, but they will have set up like a state-of-the-art rules to prevent such situations from happening. I think that sometimes this is like a bit like, the US is like 200 and whatever for 40 years old democracy, and they are still like on a legacy kind of system, whereas in Spain we are like only 40 years something out of it, and then I presume that when the guys designed the electoral system 45 years ago, they studied several things and they came up with something that make more sense, that what is going on in the US. So, and yet, as you say, maybe this is a good opportunity for Americans to tackle this thing seriously. Yeah, this might be maybe the better legacy of Deity. I don't know.
I'm actually pretty sure that that there was a lot of fraud in the last election.
You see, the thing is that I cannot know about that, but see, I'm saying this because I am charitable in the sense that I'm willing to concede that's the case. You know, I don't know it. I'm just I have not studied the evidence, as I was telling you, because I'm not that interested. I don't have a lot of skin in that game. Though I've seen this Project Veritas webpage, some friends have sent me some links and so on. So they may be biased. They will like they may have some underlying intention in the evidence that they collect. But of people getting the ballots from other people, and they were recording this with hidden cameras, and it's like, you can do it. This does not preclude or presume that it has been done in a large enough numbers to fix the elections, but it shows that it can be done easily.
That's a crazy standard. That's a crazy standard.
It's a crazy standard, yeah.
You would never apply that standard to your own life. You know, if you I don't know, had a store that was selling something, and you came to your store in the morning and found the window was broken, and there was a guy climbing out of the window with some stuff in his arms, would you think that that was the only stuff that was stolen? Like, you know, you should have to prove fraud. You should have to prove the possibility of fraud. And there's lots of proof of possibility of fraud. Lots.
You know, unfortunately, David, I think that same as, or fortunately, it's like, let's not do value judgments, but I think that very soon, if not yet the case, same as you were saying about global warming, and then being more of almost a religious tenet that you have to support yes or yes, that this election was a fair one, will soon be something that might not be possible to discuss on social media, and apparently the case already in Facebook, which I didn't know. And anyway, the funny thing also is that you can openly discuss what happened in the 2000 election, right? That you can have conspiracy theories, or even the 2016. Okay, well, let's see. David, was a very interesting talk to you, to learn about your ideas. And I will just close. I try to close these conversations always by asking the invited person to recommend some book, preferably not Nassim's. Nassim's are fine also, but some others that you find that we should be reading.
Oh boy, you know, you should have prepared me for this.
Sorry.
I'm looking at my shelves to see if there's something
that inspires you. If it's random, it's even better. You can do a random pick. That would be very Talebian.
Let's see. What can I recommend? Well, I don't know. Nothing is jumping out at me.
Well, let me put it some other way. What are you reading now? You are
oh, well,
even if it's not a particularly good recommendation.
Let me see. Let me just see. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to. Well, here's something. A random thing.
Mm-hmm. I would say, David, that it will be a semi-random pick, because you are taking the recommendation very, very seriously. You are the person so far that has taken this question the more seriously.
Well, I'm not taking it so seriously, because I just looked up and I saw there's another bookshelf in front of me that you don't see. This book,
Prime Ministers.
It's a good book for
Okay.
understanding. If you want us to understand Israel, this guy was a speechwriter for like the first like five prime ministers of Israel.
Okay.
And no, he was
a very good recommendation, and very unlikely that we would get from someone else. What's the name of the book? The Prime Ministers by?
The Prime Ministers by Yehuda Avner.
Yehuda Avner. Okay.
And it's like a worm's eye view, because he's like not such an important person in terms of
politics,
history, but he like knew everybody, all the prime ministers very personally,
from the backstage, so to say. Huh?
So okay, it's a very interesting book.
Well, thanks so much, David. I enjoyed talking to you. It took us more than an hour. And see you on Twitter, and maybe in my page, who knows.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.